Welcome back. I'm Harry Reagan, president of the Jacksonville Historical Society. You're watching the Jacksonville History Show. We're here every Wednesday night at 8 and various other times during the broadcast week. And now we welcome Paul Tutwiler, who is past president of the Durkeeville Historical Society. Paul,
thank you.
Nice to have you with us.
Thank you.
Well, where is Durkeeville, first of all?
Durkeeville is a community just north and west of downtown Jacksonville, one of the original suburbs of Jacksonville.
It is an old area, and for people who don't know or haven't been there recently, it has made a remarkable comeback.
It certainly has. We're very proud of that. The spearheading of the comeback was led by the Jacksonville Housing Authority as part of a Hope 6 redevelopment effort. Durkeeville was originally a public housing development that was built by the federal government beginning in the 1930s. So Durkeeville itself has historical significance because it was the city's first public housing development.
And that's really, I guess, a key part of the roots of the neighborhood, right?
Absolutely. The Durkees themselves were original people who helped resettle the Jacksonville after the Union forces came in and took over
yeah.
the Confederacy in Jacksonville, and basically Durkee was one of the people who remained to help rebuild Jacksonville, and his family became prominent citizens in the Jacksonville area, becoming a sheriff from the city himself. So his heirs eventually sold the federal government the property that became Durkeeville proper, and the community began its roots approximately about that time as the area began to develop as a middle class and upper class community.
And it's not an area that is precisely defined. I mean, it's not Springfield is a historic district, and we know exactly what the boundaries are. Durkeeville is a little bit vague, and it's okay if you want to be part of Durkeeville. You may just be outside of what you think Durkeeville is, but...
Well, what we did, we meaning the Durkeeville Historical Society, founded in February in 1998, we wrestled with that. We wanted to know, well, are we going to talk about the public housing itself or the greater community around the public housing? And we actually took the racial divide that began at Jefferson Street and moved westward, and decided that we needed to encompass areas that had a similar character. So we went as far west as the Edward Waters community. We went far north as what's now MLK Parkway. And to the south, we claimed Kings Road. So that area had the most in common in terms of its founding, the way that it developed, and eventually what it became.
And Myrtle Avenue, I guess, is kind of your main street?
That's the core of the community.
Mm-hmm. Well, tell us a little bit about the history of the organization,
okay.
The Durkeeville Historical Society. People were interested in getting something going to recognize and celebrate the history of the neighborhood?
That's exactly what happened. We had mostly seniors, and they're seniors almost in their 90s, who had transcended the worst of times in the community. They were homeowners beginning in the 1930s. As Durkeeville was built, they moved, they married and moved and developed families there, and we're very proud of the community that they established. They did not want to go to their final resting place with the legacy of the community being forgotten. They wanted to be remembered for the best of times when physicians and doctors and other prominent citizens actually walked hand in hand with people who were of more humble beginnings, the shoeshine people, the people who worked in the automotive industry, and they built a very, very proud community. And so those are the days that we actually celebrate as we look back, and we have a photo spread throughout the museum that we constantly rotate, and actually shows many of the faces of the past. And many of our visitors who come to the center see their grandparents or see themselves as small children, and it's a celebration of the best of times.
Well, speaking of photos, a good cue. Let's take a look at a photo, one of the photos that you brought with you. It's a school photo, which is very interesting. We think it's maybe 80 years old.
I think it's at least 80 years old. We date it by the clothing that's actually worn by the students. We see that some of them are in knickerbockers, others are in rather simple clothing, And it speaks to me in a number of ways. It's one of my personal favorites because we noticed that one of the young men on the front row, he don't have shoes on, and it speaks to the diversity of the income in the community. But even though he don't have shoes on, his head is up high, and it speaks to the pride that he must have found inside of himself, the dignity, if you will, to go forward. And so being a former school teacher myself, I think that it inspired me, certainly not from the best of strong foundations personally. I'm really encouraged that people can raise beyond the roots that they have to ascend to new heights.
And what school would that have been?
That would have been La Villa Elementary School.
And one of the things that I think you, well, tell me, someone who goes to the museum, first of all, where is it?
Okay. The museum is behind J.P. Small Park in the Durkeeville Public Housing site. It's one of the original buildings that the Housing Authority did not level. They preserved it just so that we could use it for such purposes. And it illustrates just the fine construction at that time that the founders of the Durkeeville community had in mind. The other part of it that was preserved is a daycare. So two of the original buildings that were constructed were preserved from demolition, and one of them is a daycare, and the other one is a museum. So it speaks to the new beginning and the old.
And what hours would it be open?
Tuesdays from 1 to 5 and Fridays from 1 to 5.
So someone who goes to the Durkeeville Historical Museum, what would they see?
They'll see an art gallery. They'll see artifacts. It's for the most part a gallery of a community's history. It talks about all of the things that people had to do in order to survive in that era. We have everything from butter churns to nice just photographs of just families who were physicians and who were able to go to do to the regular walks of life.
And people in the neighborhood contributed various artifacts and photos and so forth to the museum?
We solicited information, we knocked on doors. We actually went to prominent families and asked if they could give us some of their memorabilia. Many were donated outright. There were some prominent citizens. Miss Sally Mathis's family gave us some of her artifacts. J.P. Small, whom the ballpark is currently named after, his widow gave us his entire collection to display there. It was just a pictorial history of Stanton, but we're very, very proud to have it there. So many of the people who went to the school come back and find themselves.
Well, the ballpark itself is an important historical monument.
Yes, right? It is. It was originally donated by Mr. Durkee just before Durkeeville public housing was developed in the 1930s. It became the core of the community. It was the city's first municipal ballpark. And so inasmuch it's being preserved at this time by the city of Jacksonville, and it's being registered as a historical site for the city.
And among other things that we would know about the ballpark, a very, very, very famous ball player played ball there.
Yes, Mr. Hank Aaron played ball there, and he, of course, went to national acclaim. But he married a local girl. And I think the celebration of what we're trying to do is certainly to celebrate Hank Aaron and his achievements, but think about the family, the character of the people there, that he found himself, in love with one of them and took her to new heights. And her brother ended up going to national acclaim, being the first African-American general manager of any professional sport, going to the Atlanta Braves. So the community was...
Who is that?
His name is Bill Lucas, William Bill Lucas. And so, these are the types of things that we want the community residents and people who don't know much about Durkeeville to understand that this is a proud community that was able to do a lot of very wonderful things.
We're going to show some more photos, and what you'll see a lot in the museum, I think, is people from the neighborhood. And so we're going to take a look at some pictures of various people. You told me that in a lot of cases people come back and find their own photo when they were growing up in Durkeeville.
That's correct. This is a family group. This is a father and a son. This is Isaiah forgot his last name, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Isaiah and his father, but the young lady in the photograph is who we really remember the most. Her name is Olivia Forrest, and this is her mother, and that's her brother and father. But it speaks to the dress of the people at the time, and she's still there. She's very proud of the fact that her father was a developer. He built homes that are still remaining in the community, including the very home that she lives in. So beginning in about the 1930s, she built a very nice home. Since we claim our boundaries at Jefferson Street, that community just to the west of it is known as Sugar Hill, and Sugar Hill falls within the boundaries of the Durkeeville Historical Society.
Okay, we got another photo up here.
Yes, this is the actual developer himself, and the photograph that's next will be Miss Olivia Forrest, her father, whom this is, and her brother Isaiah.
Okay.
She's now about 90, by the way.
And we're going to take a look at one of many scrapbooks here. Just we can show a page here which shows a lot of the, well, boxing, evidently, from looking at this scrapbook, was a major activity in the area.
This actual boxing event occurred in the ballpark that we were referring to. There were many different events that occurred in the community for just recreation. The major recreational center of the community was Wilder Park. Wilder Park has long since gone. When the expressway came through, it was actually taken, and so they created new recreational centers. But everything from shuffleboard to boxing to baseball and basketball, a lot of the youth found themselves in recreational activities just by volunteers who actually came in. And of course, I like to say the word neighbor then meant different than it does today. People looked out for the community.
Well, it's a remarkable neighborhood. It has made a comeback, and it has you've managed to hang on to your historical roots as well and to celebrate them. Paul Tutwiler, we appreciate you being with us on the Jacksonville History Show. Hope you'll come back again.
Well, thank you so much. I'm looking forward to that.
And that's our show for tonight. The Jacksonville History Show is here every Wednesday night at 8 and various other times during the broadcast week. For more information, visit the Historical Society's website, www.jackshistory.com. So long, everyone.